Hi, and welcome back to Ghosties. I'm Maci.
And I'm Nadoly.
And for those of you who don't know yet, this is a podcast where we will basically be getting together, drinking good tea, and discussing anything in the realm of paranormal that piques our interest, like ghosts, spirits, hauntings, dark entities, unusual, creepy, anything that we deem exciting, really.
All of it.
And today, we'll be discussing Ouija boards. Yeah. One thing I always remember when I think about a Ouija board is our mom telling us, like, this is like the first lesson I feel like she ever taught us, was to never use a Ouija board. Mm-hmm. And from then on, I was just like, you got it, no problem, won't do it.
And I never questioned it either. I never even had the, because if she would ever tell us, don't do this, I'm like, well, why not? And I'd always want to try it. But the Ouija board thing, it was, as soon as she said it, I said, well, okay, you're right. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted to participate when my friends were doing them. Never.
I asked her because I always imagined that she decided that we weren't allowed to do it because she had some creepy encounter and just didn't want to discuss it. No. I asked her and she was like, yeah, I've done it before. Nothing happened.
But she just felt it.
Well, then why? Why weren't we allowed to do it? I mean, I understand, but like, what was your reasoning? She's like, I didn't want you to bring anything scary into our house.
And I mean, we already had something scary in the house. So
yeah. So I just thought that was funny. I needed to share that with you.
Yes. Well, I mean, I was there.
No, I mean my asking of her, because I just asked her the other day, like 3 days ago.
Oh.
Though I never used an actual Ouija board, mostly because my mother, I have a confession. It's not that bad, actually. You know, we had a neighbor who was like one of my good friends. Of course, she was awesome. She was like one of my really good friends from like elementary, junior high. We would always go back and forth to each other's houses. We like had property that butted up against each other, and we would walk the trails. And she always had the best stories that spirits told her what happened, and that she had feelings of murder and mystery occurring on our property. It was so terrifying, but so fun. And one day she told me that she had, if my memory serves me correct, she had felt that she had contacted some man on the property that was like suffering or something like that. And we didn't have a Ouija board. And I was like, I don't know about this, man. She drew one in the sand, dirt outside. And I was just like, okay, I'm here for this. And we got a broken piece of metal or like a knife or something.
A knife!
And we like dropped it or threw it or something, and whatever letter it landed on, I don't remember how it ended. All I remember was got out of there. I was like, no, I can't do this anymore.
I don't like it being attached to the ground. I feel like that's scarier than like buying the one from like Toys R Us.
I didn't even think about that.
Which Toys R Us, what are we doing? But the ground, that's like mother call me mother. Mother Earth. That's scary.
I agree. I never even thought about it that way, but like, yeah, it's like we're like soaked it into the earth. Yeah, freaky. But I just thought I'd share that with you because it scares me a little. It's like right by our house too.
You did this? Okay.
I'm sorry. Anyway, we'll also be trying new teas every week, or repeating teas if we really like it. And today we're going to be trying one that's like one of my all-time favorites. Its flavor is called Moonlight Earl Grey. And I think you're really going to like it.
I've never tried it, so I'm excited.
It's so good. Okay, you ready to pour the tea?
Pour the tea.
All right, so to get into it, starting with our first story, let's go. Cindy was 13, living with her large, devout Christian family in the mountainous countryside of northern Maine. She was the middle child, having 3 older sisters, a younger sister, and a younger brother. During the fall of her 8th grade year, a friend offered to let her borrow a Ouija board.
Scared. Hold on. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Because I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother. Okay.
Scary. During the fall of her 8th grade year, a friend offered to let her borrow a Ouija board after they discussed all the subtle but weird things her friend had experienced. Because Cindy knew how strongly their parents would disapprove, that weekend she and her older sister snuck the board into their room, secretly playing late at night. The mysterious talking board mesmerized Cindy. She became obsessed with it. She could think of nothing else. Every day after school, Cindy had an hour alone in the house before her older sisters returned from high school that she used to play with the Ouija board, rattling off the list of questions she kept to ask the spirits she believed they could summon. One Monday afternoon, right after getting home from school, she cautiously crept up to her room, set up the Ouija board on her bed, and gently laid her fingertips on top of the pointer. After just 10 minutes of sitting quietly, the planchette started to glide softly across the board. It spelled out H-I. Cindy's breath caught in her throat. "Hi," she answered. "Who are you?" J-A-K-E. A shock ran through Cindy. Jake was a friend of hers who had died in a car accident in the 4th grade. "Jake, is it really you?" Cindy sat up, her arms shaking with excitement. The pointer moved quickly to yes. Over the next hour, Cindy held a conversation with Jake. Every day after school, Cindy raced to her room to communicate with Jake about her life and future. By the following week, she noticed that the conversations were becoming darker and angrier. By the 2nd week of communicating with Jake, Cindy had the impression that the spirit she had trusted to be her friend wasn't a friend at all, rather a dark and terrible imposter. Finally, by that Friday, the entity revealed itself as a demon, threatening Cindy that if she told anyone about their conversations, she would die. That night, when her sisters returned home, they found Cindy curled up in a corner crying. It is said that it took a week in a mental health facility before Cindy could recover from the emotional damage that the entity caused her during those 2 fateful weeks.
Is this real? Okay.
It's internet lore.
Okay.
I like to believe so.
Oh, okay.
I looked for people telling their stories, or like at least close secondhand stories. I tried to. Let's just believe it is.
Okay.
But yeah, either way, creepy.
Scary. I don't like the deceptive part. That's really...
Dude, yeah.
I don't like it.
The deception really scares me the most too, I
Yeah.
think. So where did the Ouija board come from is really the question I had when researching for this episode. Use of divination of one kind or another has been written about for centuries. Though unsubstantiated, it is said that as early as 540 BC, ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras attempted to hold seances of sorts and speak to the dead. During the Song dynasty in ancient China, they practiced Fuji, a form of necromancy which involved using a suspended sieve to guide a stick that would then draw characters in the sand. It wasn't until the 19th century, though, when spiritualism began to gain popularity in the US, that we saw the invention of the talking board that we know today. Spiritualism had existed overseas for some time, but began to gain popularity when in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, 14-year-old Maggie Fox and her 11-year-old sister Kate began to speak to the dead by the way of tapping and knocking.
Oh.
Yeah. Spiritualism was on the rise as years went by, and coupled with massive amounts of death during the Civil War and the deep desire to contact lost loved ones, widespread interest in communing with the dead using things like knocking, table turning, planchettes, and eventually talking boards set in. Mediums and clairvoyants then began offering their services, marketing themselves throughout the US and North America. As said by Robert Murch, who is an expert historian on the Ouija board, everyone lost a father, a son, an uncle, a grandfather, a cousin. Death touched everybody in a way that had never happened in the US. Talking boards gave people peace of mind because they couldn't get answers any other way. It's really sad.
That is really sad.
Like, I understand that. Like,
yeah. You're not just like a couple of high schoolers like, oh, let's go talk to the dead janitor at the school. It's like, no, I miss my husband. That's sad.
And like, sometimes they just didn't come home and they didn't find their bodies. They weren't identified, you know? So like, they were just like, oh, I wonder where they are.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. Holding seances and attempting to contact the deceased was pretty commonplace in the 1800s, which surprised me. It wasn't even considered sacrilegious by most Christians. Interesting. Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's wife, even held seances in the White House after the death of their 11-year-old son to typhoid fever in 1862.
Oh my God.
Yeah, crazy. Bet there's some ghosts in the White House for sure. Nobody's quite sure who exactly invented the Ouija board, like as we know it today, but some credit a cabinet maker.
It was Toys R Us.
Basically, yeah. Some credit a cabinet maker named E.C. Raichi, I think that's how you say it, who claims to have made the first Ouija board, only to have his product and idea stolen by Charles Kennard, though it's also commonly believed that Raichi actually sold it to him. So, I don't know. It's kind of like he said, she said kind of thing. According to Kennard, though, he came up with the idea while sitting at the kitchen table of his new house. He used a breadboard and a teacup and placed his hands on it and like watched the cup move over each letter, as he put it, accessing his subconscious. So, regardless of who actually invented it, though, the talking board became a hit in Chestertown, Maryland, where Kennard was from. And then he ended up recruiting a lawyer from Baltimore named Elijah Bond, along with William H.A. Maupin, Colonel Washington Bowie, and John F. Green as investors to start the groundwork for manufacturing and distribution of his new invention, and they formed the Cunard Novelty Company in 1890. In April of that same year, the men held a seance with Bond's sister-in-law, Helen Peters, who Bond called a strong medium. It's said by some that they asked the board what it wanted to be called. So like, what should the talking board be called? And it spelled out Ouija. And when asked what the word meant, the board spelled out good luck.
Oh, so either good luck, was it saying I mean good luck, or is it like good luck? Like on, didn't he say that on Taken? That's what I feel. That's what I think.
That's what I'm leaning towards, but I don't know.
Also, the spelling is not satisfying to me. Ouija, everybody says Ouija, like when the movie came out, it's Ouija, but it's like Ouija.
So there's another,
I don't know.
There's another like theory
unsatisfying
that Ouija is like two words put together. Oui, yes, in French, and ja in German, like yes in German. So Ouija, yes. So like you have to be like open-minded and always yes to do it. But that's, I don't know. It's not like, it's more believed that it was the board actually naming itself.
Okay.
Side note though, the building in which the seance was held for the naming is still around today, and it is now a 7-Eleven. Apparently they have a plaque up too, so you can visit it in Maryland.
We should go. I would
honestly that'd
so
be a
down.
good little stop.
I'd be so down.
Elijah Bond filed for a patent, and as the story is told by Helen Peters' grandson, Helen went to the patent office with him in DC. The clerk says that they'll only grant the patent if they can prove that the board worked by revealing something that they didn't know. So the chief clerk asked if they could tell him what his real name is, like what his full name is. And so Helen grabs the board, sits down, because she's like, the strong medium, sits down and spells out his entire name, spelling right, everything. And so visibly shaken, they're like, yeah, okay, you got it. We'll give you the patent.
Is it the board, or was she just a medium? Did she just know his name?
I don't know.
No,
I think
I'm
she
skeptical.
Used the board to like commune with the spirits.
Okay.
Is what the story is. Either way, creepy.
Weird.
So for those of you who don't know,
all of us?
No, you should know.
Okay.
How to use a Ouija board.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty simple. There's like this wooden, it started out as a wooden board, now it's like cardboard, like any board game is. Sometimes it's still wooden.
I didn't know.
It has the alphabet, numbers 0 through 9, yes, no, and goodbye written on it. And it has a heart-shaped like little wooden plank that you're supposed to use it with multiple people. You put your fingertips on it and it's like glides across the board. You ask questions and answers all your questions by either spelling it out or like yes or no answers, just gliding over to the appropriate response.
Terrifying.
It's said by some to use the power of spirits around you to get answers to questions of the past, present, or future, but others claim that rather than spirit, it's actually something called ideomotor phenomenon, where you unconsciously move the planchette. So obviously there are going to be people who like move it around. I asked my husband, Jake, if he ever used a Ouija board, and he was like, oh yeah, of course.
Oh,
I was the one who moved it. I was like,
I was about to say he would.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Doesn't surprise me whatsoever. As soon as you said Jake, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it's not always people. I mean, there are people like Jake who move the board on purpose, but it's people believe that it's unconscious movements. So
because you want it to happen.
Something else I found interesting, a 2012 study says when answering yes or no questions with the Ouija board, it was more accurate than random guessing. So with the Ouija board, 65% accurate, and just random guessing, 50%. Basically, the implications of the study say that we have knowledge at a subconscious level that like involuntary movements can reveal. Like
I believe
like a
that.
gut reaction moving instinctively toward the right answer, even though we don't consciously know the answer.
Yeah.
Like deep within ourselves.
I believe that. I fully believe that.
So whether spirit or that, it's still fascinating.
I believe that more than I would a spirit being like, will I get this job? Yes. I think deep down. I think that's just intuition. For some instances, some circumstances.
Yeah.
Not all though.
There are people who claim to have used the Ouija board to write books and poems. So notably for me, a St. Louis housewife and spiritualist named Pearl Curran, who in 1913 claimed to come into contact with a woman from across the seas from the 17th century named Patience Worth. She wrote a series of novels, short stories, and poems that she said Patience dictated to her through the board. And this continued on until 1937, when Patience predicted Curran's unexpected death by pneumonia on December 3rd of that year.
Oh my God. That's a little scary.
I've read several stories actually of it like accurately predicting tragedy and death.
Yeah.
And that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Most of the people involved in the creation and building of its popularity seem to eventually suffer from some sort of misfortune brought by the Ouija board. Helen Peters, the medium and sister-in-law to Elijah Bond, was consulting the board about missing Civil War heirlooms in her house, and it told her that a family member had stolen them, and it led to a massive fallout between her family, like divide, and basically ruined her family. She eventually sold all of her stock in the game and spent the remainder of her life telling people not to use Ouija boards because, quote, they lie. The eventual new owner of the Ouija board, William Fold, who, with his brother Isaac, orchestrated a hostile takeover of the Kennard Novelty Company.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He had actually had great success with sales. I mean, not surprising. In a 1920 article, the New York Times compared the popularity of the Ouija board to that of bubble gum. And in 1927, the Baltimore Sun reported that Fold had personally made $1 million from sales of the board, which is equivalent to about $15.2 million today.
I was about to say, that's a lot of money now.
Mm-hmm. But his success didn't last much longer than that.
Of course not.
William Fold is said to have been supervising the installation of a flagpole on a new 3-story building that the board prompted him to build after telling him to prepare for big business in 1927. According to the Baltimore Sun, he was standing near the edge of the roof, grasping an iron support of the pole to steady himself. The workman said when the support suddenly pulled away and he toppled over backwards.
See, that sounds like a setup, but...
Fold initially grabbed hold of the sill of an open window, which suddenly closed on his hands, sending him crashing down to the sidewalk below. He broke several ribs, but was expected to survive until a bump in the road on the way to the hospital sent one of his fractured bones through his heart and killed him.
That's not funny.
That's not funny.
That's not funny.
But I feel you.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, 1, coincidence. 2, 3, yeah, no.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been dabbling in the dog odds.
I found that story though like incredibly insane. Like it kind of scared me. Mm-hmm. His family continued to run the business until 1966 when they sold it to Parker Brothers, which was later bought out by Hasbro.
I was about to say that. Okay.
Whose website warns, handle the Ouija board with respect and it won't disappoint you. In 1967, the board distributed more units than Monopoly at 2 million sold that year. But in 1973, widespread opposition against the board began to rise.
As it should.
As it should. So the film The Exorcist seriously frightened people, and that's when everyone began to reject use of the board. So the movie, based on Roland Doe, is said to have come into contact with a demon through the use of a Ouija board, which led to his subsequent possession and exorcisms.
Oh my God.
So basically...
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we can get into that too in another episode, because that's a really fascinating case. Mm-hmm. People said that the film, like, changed the fabric of pop culture, basically. Like, just shifted gears completely. And now using divination of any kind to extract information of the unknown is considered dangerous by most.
Well,
except for the teenagers.
Yeah. You
can find countless stories online. Literally Google it. You find tons of people experiencing terrifying encounters with something considered dark on the other side. So here's one. One day I came home from a bookstore I found in downtown Orlando. They had a Ouija board. I started playing with one of my neighbors and everything was fine. We were asking questions like, where are you from? How old are you? When did you die? Are you good or evil? And then we asked how many people are in the room. It told us 4. So it was me and my neighbor, that's 2. The spirit we were talking to, that's 3. And then someone unknown, 4. At first, we thought it was one of us messing around, but we let go of the board at the same time when we asked about the 4th, and the glass started moving on its own, saying to close the board. We did what it asked. We closed with 5 prayers, asking God to come in and close the board and bless the house we used it in.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that shook me.
I got chills. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Whenever you tell me these stories, I get like the visuals in my head. So I just see the 2 like kids like playing around, and then there's like a friendly little ghost. It's like on Charmed when things would happen. You know what you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I get that.
I feel like it's like a kid. There's like, oh, there's 4 of us, and then like there's the big dark. It's always a man when it's evil. It's a big dark man standing there like watching menacingly. Scary. Oh, I got chills. I didn't like that.
So same. But there are also stories that show the lasting effects of use of the Ouija board. So not just like in the moment, like, ooh, that's creepy, never do it again. But there's this one. I have no evidence and I do not care if you don't believe me. I've used a board with results and let something into my home and have been physically assaulted by this entity. It started out with that feeling like you're being watched and doors closing and footsteps on the hard wood when you were home alone, and progressed slowly into being kept awake by something shaking the bed or pulling off your covers, sometimes even whispering your name.
That's a demon.
The board would disappear for days on end, then show up in places you would never have put it. I became obsessed with it. Then it was a black mass in the corner of the room, or the silhouette of a man watching you from the doorway. After that, it escalated pretty quickly. I had my hair pulled, fingers pricked, scratched, choked, held down in bed while this thing whispered in my ear in what could have only been Latin.
Oh my God.
We had our house blessed, and the bad thing hasn't shown back up. Just normal occurrences now, but I will never again play with one of those boards.
I hated that. I hated that.
I'm sorry.
I just started sweating. But I don't want to uncover because I'm scared.
My problem is I like visualize this and I can just see the black mass in the corner of the room.
Because we know I have a story with that.
Freaks me out.
God. Okay.
I think everything I say on here freaks me out, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, writing this, I've been texting her. I've been scared basically the whole time.
And I'm just like, I'm ready to listen. I'm here if you need me, but not really.
Sorry. Yeah, basically sorry, not sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The Ouija board continues to stay relevant in pop culture. I mean, we've all seen the movies where the teenagers grab out Ouija boards and do their little seance and then open up to a world of spiritual and physical terror. Actually, even in the news, which I didn't know. In 1994, the English Court of Appeals granted Stephen Young, who was initially convicted of murdering Harry and Nicola Fuller, a retrial after it was revealed that several of the jurors in the case had used a Ouija board to attempt to contact the souls of the deceased to make their verdict.
What?
Though he was reconvicted, so they didn't really need a Ouija board to find out he was guilty.
Oh my God.
There have also been murders directly tied to Ouija boards. One being in 2015 when Donald Hartung claimed that the board told him to murder his mother and brother. Which, that's a creepy case too. I've read that one, and that one didn't sit well with me. Like we mentioned in the first episode, malevolent spirits can lie and disguise themselves as being of light and love. They can trick us into thinking they are here for good, or even that they're loved ones that have passed away.
Which is just another layer of cruel.
Despicable.
I hate that.
All just like leading us to let our guard down and open ourselves up to this. It's seen as a doorway, really, use of a Ouija board, forming a relationship with an entity as you reach your hand through the other side, inviting it into your life. People say to never provoke a spirit, trying to get it to prove itself as real. Oh, if you're really here, give us a sign. Shut that door. Don't do that. Big no-no. And if the planchette begins to move in a repetitive motion like a figure 8, always immediately say goodbye and find a way to cleanse and protect yourself and your space, because some say that that's like evidence of a strong and powerful demon trying to like exit the board and use it as a portal or a doorway. You respect the board and whatever spirits may be around. And if you ever need to get rid of the board, some say that it's best to burn the board in a safe place. Though I've read plenty of stories where the board claims to have been returned or like end up back in their room after they've thrown it away or tried to destroy it. And it's just like right back there.
Yeah, I've heard that a bunch of times. Oh.
Yeah. Obviously, we definitely do not recommend dabbling in Ouija boards.
No.
But if you're going to, always remember to say goodbye to close your session. That's one thing I read over. But as said by Father Carlos Martins on the Exorcist Files podcast, in the spiritual realm, just because you want to end a relationship with evil doesn't mean it complies.
And honestly, in this world too.
Same. That's true. Same. So I want to leave you with one last story. This is the story that freaked me out. Probably mostly because where we grew up, it's like kind of set in a rural place, and so
that's why I'll never live. Like everybody's like, oh, I want to have a farm and some land. And I'm like, neighbors. I'm good with neighbors. We don't have to talk, but I want them there.
Yeah, just to know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. So it was told through a thread of tweets by a man named Marcus Hitchcock. I edited it a little for clarity because Twitter is the Wild West for grammar, but the story is basically the same. So
okay.
Oh, it is the same.
Yeah.
Let me get some tea before I do this. I'm scared.
I am very scared. I don't like this. I'm literally always like drenched in sweat by the end of this because I'm just terrified and I can't take the blanket off.
I know there are a lot of people who are skeptical of demons and spirits, but I would strongly advise you to stay away from Ouija boards. I learned this the hard way as a child. He was quoting a tweet he previously posted saying, "I remember listening to my grandma on the phone with my aunt telling her to evacuate New Orleans because Katrina was coming. She said, 'Chill, ain't nobody scared of no little bit of water,' and she died."
Sorry,
That's terrible. It's like nervous giggles.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, I tweeted this about my aunt who lived in New Orleans. Even though she was family, she was mean as hell and overall a very toxic person to be around. She would beat me and my cousins a lot as children, and she would always curse at us for no reason. My aunt was into some weird stuff. She owned an antique shop in New Orleans, and she had a living space that was right under it. She would collect skulls and candles and set them up all around the house. My grandma thought she was heavy into witchcraft and didn't want me over there. One day, my aunt had a pretty bad stroke and had to start using a wheelchair. She had a little elevator installed in her house that would take her from downstairs where she lived all the way upstairs to the shop whenever she needed to go up. When they heard Katrina was coming, my family tried to get her to come to Georgia, but she couldn't leave the shop. When the storm came, all the power went out, which meant her elevator stopped working. She got stuck under the shop when the water rose and drowned in her wheelchair. Now here's where the story really begins. My uncle went to New Orleans and got all the stuff out of her shop when the waters receded. Most of the stuff she had in there was looted, but he still was able to collect some of her items that she had in the room below the shop. My uncle brought back most of the stuff in suitcases and in bags to go through. I was living with my aunt and uncle at the time in South Georgia. The house they lived in was on a dirt road, literally in the middle of nowhere. My cousin and I were going through some of the bags he brought back with him and found my aunt's Ouija board that she always used and yelled and cursed at us for touching. We never knew what it was. We just always assumed it was for kids because it had a bunch of letters on it. My uncle used to leave us home alone a lot because he worked at the fire department in town. On this day, he left to work an overnight shift and my cousin thought it would be a good idea to play with the board that everyone had told us not to touch. So we start playing with it. And on the bottom of the board, there were little instructions on how to use it. It told us to communicate with spirits and summon certain loved ones who had passed on. We started asking the board where Tupac and Biggie were at. When the board wouldn't let us talk to them, I came up with the amazing idea to ask my aunt how to use it. So we asked the board to bring our aunt back and show us how to use her board. Mind you, we had every single light on in the house. I kid you not, the power suddenly went out.
Of course it did.
Now remember, we're in the middle of nowhere, so when the power goes out, it is pitch black. I was shook because there wasn't even a storm or anything to knock the power out. My cousin and I started screaming, and for some reason, we went and hid under the bed. Laying under the bed, we noticed it had gotten really quiet. I had a cell phone that I used, but I left it plugged up in the kitchen. This was a pretty big house, so to get my phone, I would have to walk like 100 feet in the dark all the way to the kitchen. My cousin was telling me to go get the phone, and as scared as I was, I figured if I ran, it wouldn't be so bad. So I got up from under the bed and was getting ready to run. Suddenly, somebody started knocking on the door. My cousin said it was just the ice maker, but how could it be the ice maker when the power was out? The knocking got a little bit louder at this point, and now we both knew for sure it wasn't the ice maker, and he tells me to go see who it is. But I, of course, was hesitant. At this point, whoever was at the door was banging like police serving a warrant. The banging was super loud. I don't even know where I got the courage, but I made my way to the door and said loudly, "Who is it?" Suddenly, the banging stopped. I couldn't hear anything outside anymore. I grabbed my flip phone and turned the flashlight on. My cousin is standing behind me with a swimming pool noodle as a weapon. I was so scared I couldn't even ask about this choice of weapon. We just ran back to the room and slid back under the bed. The house is still pitch black as I try to call my uncle, but his phone is going straight to voicemail. My cousin was trying to get my attention, but I'm telling him to be quiet because I'm calling, and I don't want whoever was at the door to know where we are. That's when he begins pointing to the window. The window right above the TV in front of us, we could clearly see out of. There is somebody peeking through the window. A full face is pressed in the glass, and I couldn't make out who or what it was. At this point, my heart is beating so fast, I think I'm about to pass out. My cousin is losing it. It's tears and snot all over the floor, but I put my hand over his mouth, telling him to be quiet. Whoever is at the window is literally scratching it, and in the creepiest voice I've ever heard, said, "I can see you."
Oh my God.
I grab my cousin by the shirt, pull him from under the bed, and dart to the next room over. I didn't even look in the direction of the window. All I could hear was screaming and banging on it as we ran out. All the windows that were up in the room fell from the banging. We get to the next room, close and lock the door, and I jump into the closet with my cousin. My uncle kept an old rifle in there, but I didn't even know how to use it. I began to notice a little breeze in the dark room. I peeked out of the crack from the closet door, and the window is open. I was so scared, I literally can't even move. I know I have to close the window, but I don't want to go near it. I don't hear the banging anymore, and I thought whoever it was could have left, but my cousin said, what if they're coming to this side of the house? I run over to the window with a rifle I don't know how to use in my hand. I figured I could close the window as fast as I could and run back to the closet. I get to the window and try to close it, but this is an old house and it takes a good amount of strength to close these windows. My uncle has this big field right in front of the house. I look out of the window and I swear I saw somebody standing out on the edge of the field. My cousin, who was still standing in the closet, was finally able to find the flashlight, and he tossed it to me. I shine the light in the field, and before I get a chance to really see who it is, they start running toward the house. The window is still not closing. I pick up the shotgun and start pulling the trigger. It's not firing. This person is like 10 feet away from the window and isn't stopping. For some reason, I throw the rifle out the window at whoever it is, grab my cousin, closing the door as we race toward the living room. We are standing in the living room and have at this point accepted the fact that we are both about to die because the window was left open. I just know whoever or whatever it was is about to find us. I hug my cousin and tell him that I love him, and in the middle of the hug, I see lights outside. Headlights. I look out the window from behind the couch and I see a big F-250 truck outside pulling up into the driveway. It's the old man who lives on the property on the other side of my uncle's house. He and his wife wanted to see if our power was out as well. My cousin and I run out the side door of the house and straight toward the truck. We tell him everything in like 7 seconds. He told us to stay in the truck with his wife and he pulled out his own pistol. I noticed that the window in the room we had just ran from was now closed. I told his wife that somebody was definitely in the house now, and she's literally screaming at him to get out of the house, but he isn't answering. She called 911 and made them send every available officer this town had. This man finally left the house and ran back to the truck. We drove to his house and waited for the police to arrive. I finally got through to my uncle to let him know what was happening. He said he had been out on a fire call, but he was heading straight home and arrived at the same time as the police. The police searched the entire house and didn't find anything. No signs of forced entry, no scratches on the windows, no dents on the doors. The only thing that they found was copious amounts of water all over the floor and through the halls. They asked if we had been playing in the water, but we told them no. We told the police the whole story, but they treated us like we were just little kids staying up too late and seeing things. But I know what I saw. My uncle took us to the fire station that night. The next morning, my uncle and a few of the other firemen went back to the house, got the Ouija board, and burned it in the front yard. My uncle and his wife got a preacher to bless the house, but I still never went back there. To this day, that whole series of events was the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. I'll be 26 next week, and I still remember everything that happened that night when I was just 13. I don't want to believe that could have been my aunt. At the end of the day, I know she was mean, but I don't think she wanted on to hurt us. But I still can't explain why the police found water on the floor. Maybe it was her. I remember talking to my uncle about it the next day. He said that when he found the rifle I was using, it didn't have the safety on and it was fully loaded, which means there was no reason it shouldn't have fired. I still think about it every single day.
I don't like the visual of the looking in the
window scratching! The window scratching, like...
now, I'm not gonna look out the windows, and now I'm scared.
I have to drive home and look out of windows.
I have to go to bed. It's midnight. Oh my god. Ugh.
I'm honestly really scared still. I've read this story like 4 times and I'm still scared.
Any story where there's like someone and they start running.
Yeah.
Something about it is
unsettling. Unnerving.
And being told I can see you when you're trying to hide. I have chills. Oh god.
Yeah.
That really freaked me out.
Yeah.
That really, really freaked me out.
I'm not even sorry because now you can commiserate with me. I'm like,
no, but I don't have to drive home.
Yeah, I'm scared.
But it's okay. Here.
I might. But yeah, that's all I've got for you today.
Okay. I think that one. I mean, the last episode was scary. It was. But this with the actual accounts, I don't know.
Something about it.
Something about it.
Yeah, it always freaks me out.
I feel scared. Okay, well.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, let's end it. I feel sick. I feel sick to my stomach.
Yeah, so if you made it this far, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being here with us. We're having a good time. So
I had a really good time.
I hope y'all are having a good time too.
Mom, Mimi, Kayla.
Yeah. We'll be putting out a new YouTube video and podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts every Monday. So you'll be hearing from us weekly.
Yep.
You can check us out on YouTube and Instagram at Ghosteas Pod. That's GHOSTEASPOD. Please rate, review our podcast wherever you're listening and let us know what you think.
But be nice, please, because I will cry.
Yes. Constructive criticism is preferred.
Or just a compliment. I'll take it. Be honest, though.
Be honest, but nicely. If you aren't already, check us out on YouTube in video form. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, do all the things. Share if you feel compelled. And if you have a creepy encounter or anything you just can't explain, please send it to us. We'd love to hear from you. You can DM us on Instagram, or you can send us an email at ghosteaspod@gmail.com. So same spelling. And maybe you'll hear your story on a future episode. But we're so excited to continue this, and we've got a lot of awesome things to talk about coming up. We've got like tons planned, so stick around, and yeah, please let us know what you think.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.